Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled Olivia Newton-John and Patrick McDermott. Alright, so where do I begin? The reason I used Olivia Newton-John in the title of today's video is because of name recognition. I think we all know that she was a pop artist, pop singer, and appeared in television and film for many decades. And she was born in Cambridge, England. And when she was 6 years old, her father took a job in Melbourne, Australia. So they immigrated to Australia. She does not have Australian citizenship, however. Anyway, so she went with her parents to Melbourne, Australia, and then she ended up in New York City working for Don Kirshner, the guy who discovered, created, and manufactured Carole King, not her real name. Right? Very few people in Hollywood use their real name. Anyway, RCA is involved with this story. RCA is involved with EMI and the Beatles. They're involved with Elvis Presley and R.C. Victor. They're involved with the Rolling Stones through Decca Records. They're involved with Carole King and her first husband, Jerry Goffin, who wrote the lyrics for Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? After I just spent 50 years thinking that Carole King did. Her name is Klein. It's Carole Klein without an E. They added an E for Carole and dropped the Klein in favor of King because it sounds less Jewish, right? So let's review. So Don Kirshner is Jewish. Carole King is Jewish. Olivia Newton-John is Jewish, okay? Who am I missing here? Neil Sedaka. Neil Sedaka was dating Carole Klein. Before she was Carole King, she was Carole Klein. Neil Sedaka is Jewish. He worked for RCA. He worked at the Brill building in Manhattan. That's how Carole Klein and her later to become husband, Jerry Goffin, ended up on a song team with dozens of other potential songwriters. And the reason that I am speaking with some confidence about the ambiguity of Carole Klein King is because in her own words on a David Letterman interview, decades after she'd become an icon, right? She admitted, to David Letterman, who I don't think was really paying attention to the answers to his questions, right? She said she was on a 3-person songwriting team amongst a half dozen other songwriting teams. Well, that's 18 people. That's 18 people with 6 pianos in the Brill building on one floor, and for all we know, there could be other floors with pianos with songwriting teams, right? Anyway, they were given an outline for songs, and then they were given a couple hours to pull together lyrics and melodies for the outline of the theme of the song. That's called social engineering messaging, if you didn't know. And the outline of the song would be prepared by somebody who's over 45 years old, adult supervision. And the songwriter pop artists are, in the case of Carole Klein, she was only 17, 18, 19 years old. So what would she know about social engineering? Well, she wouldn't know much. And her boyfriend, Neil Sedaka, he wouldn't know a whole lot more. And her future husband, Jerry Goffin, wouldn't know much more. But the reason that I bring Carole King Klein up is that this sets the table for the introduction of Olivia Newton-John, who is 6 years younger than Carole Klein. And after we moved on from Carole Klein King, Don Kirshner went right after Olivia Newton-John, who was not just born from under a rock. And Neil Sedaka had classical music experience and attended the Juilliard School for Music in New York. So who knew that Neil Sedaka would make his career on silly pop songs, right? I want to emphasize that I saw Neil Young perform live, and I was the only person in his audience. It was just me and Neil Sedaka, who was up on a concrete pedestal, at the Alameda County Fair in Pleasanton, California, also known as the Tri Valley area. It's near where the Lawrence Livermore Weapons Laboratory is. And I saw Neil Sedaka perform 3 songs for me and just me. It was kind of sad. You know, it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a summer day, and there's Neil Sedaka with nobody in his audience. And so I went over and asked him to play some music, and we all know the Neil Sedaka tunes, do we not? I mean, it's hard to know whether he really wrote them or not, right? I mean, he's attributed to have written quite a few songs, as has Carol Klein. But I no longer believe what the media tells me the songs were that they wrote, because the media never mentions a fellow homosexual man named Howard Greenfield, who also worked at the Brill Building, and he's Jewish also. I forgot. So we've got, because he worked closely with Neil Sedaka. Howard Greenfield is from Brooklyn, New York, and he's Jewish. Don Kirshner is born in New York, and he's Jewish. Carole King is born in New York, and she's Jewish. Her first husband, Jerry Goffin, he's Jewish, and he was born in New York. Neil Sedaka, he was born in New York, and he's Jewish. And they all worked at the Brill Building, okay? That's 5. There isn't one single Catholic in that group. Anyway, nobody mentions Howard Greenfield, and he died of AIDS at age 49, okay? He was an openly gay Jewish man from New York who moved to Los Angeles, of course. And he died in Los Angeles from AIDS before his 50th birthday. He died 11 days before his 50th birthday. He was in a domestic partnership with cabaret singer, Tori Damon. All right, what I wanted to tell you is that the media forgets to mention, you know, the Wrecking Crew, which didn't go by the Wrecking Crew. They're just a bunch of studio session musicians, and they appear on virtually every single song, including the Monkees' accompaniment. But you should know that it was Howard Greenfield and Don Kirshner who created the Monkees in terms of the social engineering content of the Monkees. But Howard Greenfield is associated with writing Alice in Wonderland, Amarillo, Another Sleepless Night, Baby Roo, Bad Girl, Bewitched, the theme song for the Disney ABC Bewitched series starring Agnes Moorehead and Elizabeth Montgomery. Birds Do It, Bouncing All Over the World from the Harlem Globetrotters cartoon television show. Calendar Girl, My Little Calendar Girl, I thought that was attributed to Neil Sedaka, but it turns out Howard Greenfield is credited with writing it. Eternity, Everybody, Somebody's Fool, Falling, Foolish Little Girl, Happy Birthday, Sweet 16, another song that I thought Neil Sedaka wrote, but I guess Howard Greenfield wrote it. Kings of Clowns, Little Devil, Love Me Like a Baby, Love Will Keep Us Together, another song associated with someone else. Puppet Man, Run Samson Run, Ring a Rocket, Rainy Day Bells, Sing Me, Stairway to Heaven. I thought Led Zeppelin wrote that song. All right, The Hungry Years, When Boys Meet Girls, Where the Boys Are. You would know he's homosexual, right? So, You Used to Be, You Never Done It, You Never Done It Like That, You Mean Everything to Me. Tilly the Twinker, I swear. Twilly the Twirler, Warpaint, The Diary, Stupid Cupid, another song attributed to someone else. Stupid Cupid, written by Howard Greenfield in the Brill Building, working with Don Kirshner, who created the Monkees. Anyway, I guess if I haven't gotten through to you yet about the Wrecking Crew and Carol Kay and and all the artists, including Glenn Campbell, who was a studio session artist in Hollywood before he got his own television show, the Glenn Campbell Happy Hour show, is that we don't know anything about who wrote what in Hollywood. We don't know that Paul McCartney wrote his music. We don't know that the Beatles had anything whatsoever to do with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. We don't know that. We don't know. There's no evidence that Paul McCartney wrote those songs, and there's no evidence that they designed the album cover, and there's no proof that Robert Lamb wrote dialogue for The Big Thing, renamed Chicago Transit Authority. There's no proof. What we have is Columbia Records, and we got RCA Victor, and they control the music industry, and everything else is a psychops, okay? That's what we know. So, enter the frame, Olivia Newton-John. Let's review. Olivia Newton-John. And what is her relationship with Patrick McDermott? We'll get to that in a moment, because it's a murder, homicide, disappearance, Anne Heche type story. Olivia Newton-John, of course, yes, she was born in Cambridgeshire, England, on September 26, 1948. She is British, and she was known as an Australian singer because her family moved to Melbourne, Australia. She's a 4-time Grammy Award winner. Her music included 15 top 10 singles, whatever that means, including 5 number 1 singles on Billboard Hot 100 and Billboard's 200. If You Love Me, Let Me Know. Have You Never Been Mellow in 1975. You do know that these Billboard ratings for songs are completely rigged, and they are meaningless. They're social engineering. They're like the Academy Awards, these fake award shows or they're like Pulitzer Prizes. They have no value, no meaning. And I am happy to tell you that Noam Chomsky actually never did win a Pulitzer Prize, but he should have, because the Pulitzer Prize is as fake as he is. So I don't know why Noam Chomsky didn't get a Pulitzer Prize for applied linguistics, because he certainly deserves one, and I'd be happy to give him a plastic Pulitzer Prize. It'll probably be broken, but he can glue it together. That's what I think of Noam Chomsky. Anyway, in 1978, Olivia Newton-John starred with John Travolta in the musical film Grease. This makes her, of course, a film star, does it not? It means she's in the Screen Actors Guild. Cult, you betcha. All right, well, anyway, she didn't get married until she was 36 years old. She was a late bloomer, right? And she married a younger man who was 11 years younger. She met and married a fellow by the name, isn't that something? It was right here. Matt Lattanzi. Matt Lattanzi, who of course is an actor himself. He's most commonly recognized as the husband of Olivia Newton-John, but he did appear in films such as My Tutor and the soap opera television show Paradise Beach. I never heard of the guy before. Matthew Vincent Lattanzi married Olivia Newton-John in 1984. They were divorced in 1996. She immediately, if not beforehand, met Patrick McDermott. Patrick McDermott. Enter the picture, Patrick McDermott. All right. Not his real name. Okay, Patrick Kim McDermott was born Kim Jung Nam in Seoul, South Korea, September 18th, 1956. So, Olivia Newton-John was born in 1948, in September 1948. So, again, Patrick McDermott is a younger man. He's a little older than her first husband. He's 3 years older than her now ex-husband, but he is still 8 years younger than Olivia Newton-John. So it turns out that Kim Jong Nam was given up for adoption at age 2, and he was adopted by a Korean family. It's so hard to keep track. And he was adopted by an American family when he was 2 years old. According to his adoption records, his birth name was Kim Jong Nam. So I am assuming his birth parents must be named McDermott. That information is not included here. He went on to marry a television and film actress who didn't do much. You may not have heard of her before. She was in RoboCop, the series on television. She played a police detective. Anyway, her name is Yvette Nipar, and she married Patrick McDermott when she was 4 months pregnant with his son, whose name was Chance McDermott. Chance? Fat chance of that, right? So anyway, they divorced within 12 months of marriage. So that's that. Didn't have a happy marriage. Quick like a bunny rabbit. So I don't know how many months she knew him. At least 18 months, right? But they were only married for 11 or 12 months because they got married in 1992. They were divorced in early 1994. I'm sure they were separated for most of that time. And Patrick McDermott was a cameraman. That's different than being a photographer, I think. He also handled lighting, which makes sense. If you're going to take photographs, you should handle lighting. And he worked freelance, meaning he was an independent contractor. And he bounced around Hollywood looking for wealthy older women. And he found Olivia Newton-John as she was exiting her first of 2 marriages. They had an on-again, off-again boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. I did read that he was engaged to her. That seems to be unsubstantiated. Let's just say that they dated. Now, that's complicated because Patrick McDermott, again, who's 8 years younger than Olivia Newton-John, he lived in Van Nuys in an apartment. You know Van Nuys is where Francis Gary Powers of the CIA was murdered in Sepulveda Dam Reservoir. This is also in close proximity where Phil Hartman was murdered along with his estranged wife, Bern Hartman. They were both murdered, and that is, of course, across the street, around the corner from where, who was his name? Twitch Boss. John Twitch Boss was murdered on Ventura Boulevard, just 1 block from Phil Hartman's murder. Ellen DeGeneres, as DJ, was murdered. Technically, it's Encino, but it's next door to Van Nuys, so it's hard to know. Van Nuys, Encino is sort of the same place. Anyway, as is Calabasas, which is on the west side. All right, so anyway, Patrick Kim McDermott had an on-again, off-again relationship with Olivia Newton-John. She's got a horse ranch up in Santa Ynez, in an area that I personally know intimately. It's on the road, Figueroa Mountain Road, which is where Michael Jackson had his Neverland Ranch. Well, that's where Sally Field first owned this horse farm, and then it was transferred to Olivia Newton-John. I'm going to assume she didn't really own that property. I'm assuming that Hollywood owns that property. That's the neighborhood where Fess Parker has his winery, and he's a Disney actor. He was present during the grand opening of Disneyland in 1955, along with Ronald Reagan and Art Linkletter and Bob Cummings. And, you know, I personally met Fess Parker. I've met him in Santa Barbara at his hotel on Juan Cabrillo Boulevard, and I met him again at his bed and breakfast in Fox and Canyon on Fox and Canyon Road, which is in close proximity to where Olivia Newton-John and Michael Jackson and Sally Fields all lived, on the next road up. Up meaning northeast from Fess Parker's winery and bed and breakfast. I think it's not a coincidence that Fess Parker would have a beautiful property on Fox and Canyon Road. It's not a coincidence. It's not because of his good financial management. It's because he's a plugged-in guy in Hollywood. That's why. And that is why Olivia Newton-John was living in that zip code. It's very remote. And if you're a single woman coming out of a marriage, I think it would be very depressing to be in that canyon, as beautiful it is. If you're in love and you have a partner, it's a wonderful place to be. But if you're all alone in this world and going through a divorce and fighting it out with lawyers, I think it would be very depressing. It's so isolated there. It is so isolated there. This is, again, not far away from the Ronald Reagan CIA compound known as the Cielo de Camino del Cielo Ranch, which is owned by the CIA through the Young Republicans, Young America, CIA nonprofit. They own that 600-acre ranch, CIA owned. It's not that far from where this Olivia Newton-John property is. On a bicycle, you could go from one place to the other in 30 minutes. On a bicycle, which means in a car, you could do it in 15 minutes. So, it's relatively close. Ronald Reagan, Olivia Newton-John, Michael Jackson, Fess Parker, and that's where Solvang is, and that's where Buellton is, and that's where Los Olivos is. And if you don't know those places, Google them, because a lot of Hollywood people live in that area. So it's kind of a CIA compound housing facility. It's a spectacular place to ride your bicycle. It's a spectacular place to go wine tasting and do a bed and breakfast experience. However, you should know that there's clandestine services running underneath those vineyards. Anyway, so this Patrick McDermott fellow, he's fighting it out with his ex-wife, and they are fighting over $8,000 of child support on a now 13-year-old son. That's no big deal, really. And supposedly he's got $100,000 life insurance, which the media has wrongly said was named his son as beneficiary. That's impossible. You cannot have an under 18 person as a beneficiary. You can name the trust for the benefit of your 13-year-old son, but there is no way your son can inherit your $100,000 of life insurance. It's impossible. It has to be a trust and a trustee named. And for $100,000, which is pittance, I don't know if that was what happened. But anyway, we don't have the documents to see exactly how that life insurance was set up. Anyway, he's a fisherman, allegedly, likes to go fishing a lot. And of course, he likes to go fishing on the Freedom. That's right, I said the Freedom. Remember Natalie Wood's yacht where she was thrown into the water like a sack of potatoes? That was named the Splendor, and she was thrown into the harbor at Santa Catalina Island. Well, this story is very similar to that story. Very similar to the Natalie Wood story, which happened in 1981, in late November 1981, 33 days before the end of the year 1981. This is in 1985, and this occurs on June 30th, 2005. June 30th, 2005. So we're talking about 14 years after Natalie Wood goes into the drink at Santa Catalina Island. Patrick McDermott goes missing somewhere between San Pedro, which is a CI port facility, military intelligence port, where Charlie Manson was in prison, where Timothy Leary was in prison, where the Rolling Stones road manager Phil Kaufman was in prison, where Louis Jolion West did psychiatric prisoner dilemma game experiments, is 100 yards away from where Patrick McDermott stepped onto the Freedom to go fishing. It's the same zip code. It's 100 yards away. It's incredibly close to the prison, is this Freedom. It still operates today. It's $235 for what's called the overnight fishing trip. It's 22 hours. You leave at 10 p.m. and you return home around 7:30 to 8 p.m. That's the deal. They can put up to 35 people on this boat, which is kind of small, the Freedom, and they don't have enough accommodations for everyone to go sleeping at the same time, but they do have bunks, and they encourage you to bring a pillow and a blanket, and then I guess you can take a nap. Other than that, it's pretty much just fishing, drinking beer, and taking naps. That's what you do during the 21 to 22 hours that you're out there, is you're doing one of the above. I don't think you're fishing when the boat is steaming back to San Pedro. Anyway, I wish I had more facts and figures. Patrick McDermott is on the manifest of the logbook to enter the ship. There was no sign off. There was no head count when they returned to San Pedro. There were 23 individual chartered fisher people on the ship, and then they deboarded, and that was that, right? And 10 days go by, and his ex-wife Yvette, who he doesn't like, she's calling because Patrick McDermott didn't pick up their son as planned 10 days later. No word from Olivia Newton-John, who didn't say a thing for 7 weeks. She didn't make a public statement for 7 weeks. And meanwhile, she's on to finding her new husband because Olivia Newton-John got married shortly after this disappearance. In the next year, Olivia Newton-John married John Easterling in 2008. So within 2 years of this disappearance, she was dating John Easterling, who's still alive. Olivia Newton-John, as you know, passed away from cancer in Santa Ynez near the Fest Park or Fox and Canyon. She died at age 73 of cancer on August 8, 2022. So she's no longer part of the story. But Patrick McDermott still is, because we have never found a body, and legally I don't believe he's been declared dead. Even though the Coast Guard, the United States Coast Guard, which by the way is 100 yards away from where this Freedom ship is moored, they concluded that he probably died at sea. I don't know how they came to that conclusion, because that would be a very big magic trick to do. It is possible to do if you had a Gladio team of 3 on the boat and you had a Gladio team at San Clemente Island, which is the turnaround point for this rafting trip, this fishing trip, which, in case you didn't know, Santa Catalina Island is adjacent to Santa Catalina Island is adjacent to San Clemente Island, which is United States Navy. It's United States Air Force. It's used for weapons demolition. It's used for Navy SEAL training, where you storm the beach, secure a perimeter. It has housing facilities for United States Navy SEALs and Navy and Air Force personnel. It is a military island. And from everything I've seen in the story, the boat did not dock on the island. However, you do know they have the Zodiac rafts like were used to kill William Colby. They have those on the island, and they could shoot one of those out and grab Patrick McDermott, or you could just toss him over before the sun came out, because I'm assuming that the Freedom arrived at San Clemente Island around 3 o'clock a.m. in the morning. I don't think it takes too long to go from 10 p.m. to get out to the island. Perhaps they'd be there at 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, that gives them 3 hours to get there. I don't think it takes more than 3 hours. That means it's still pitch dark out there, and that is probably where Patrick McDermott disappeared overboard. And that could definitely be done in darkness. It would be challenging, but not again if you had a team of 3 or 2 teams of 3, 6, and that would provide cover if you had 6 men who were on the charter. See, that would help explain that when it was understood 10 days after June 30th, 2005, that he was missing, that the captain would notice. He should know this guy. He said he did games once a month to twice a month. Patrick McDermott was a regular on this charter. Everybody on the crew should know this guy, but they didn't. Anyway, they found his tackle box in the captain's cabin. And inside the tackle box was his driver's license and his wallet. It's very suspicious. It was in a fanny pack, which was inside his tackle box. Why wouldn't they look into that tackle box like the next day, like July 1st? Why wouldn't you look into that tackle box? Obviously, somebody forgot it, right? And then if you look in the box, you'd see his wallet, and you could just call him, because you know you got his phone number in the records. Just call him and say, hey, are you looking for your wallet? And that didn't happen, so that's suspicious. The other thing that's suspicious is, where's his fish? If he went fishing, he should have a burlap bag of fish, which the Freedom provides. They won't allow you to bring an ice chest. You can leave an ice chest in your car in the parking lot across 22nd Avenue in the park, but you're not allowed. They can't clutter up the ship with all these ice chests. It's too small. Anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is there's a lot of questions that haven't been answered, and there was a private investigator whose name is Klein. No relation to Carol Klein, right? Anyway, that's my story for today. Is Olivia Newton-John's ex-boyfriend went missing. She went on to a second husband, and she died of cancer. And we're still looking for Patrick McDermott. Supposedly, he's living in Puerto Vallarta or Cabo San Lucas, and may be involved with tournament fishing, but and using the name Kim, which was his middle name. All right, so there you have it. We have another mystery. It's right in smack dab in the middle of military intelligence, San Pedro. It's close proximity to where Anne Heche went missing in Culver City, which they renamed Mar Vista. Mar Vista, Culver City, San Pedro, same basic area. It's where we had the McMartin school preschool sex scandal. This is home to Charlie Manson. This is home to Tiger Woods' mysterious car crash. This is where Sharon Tate's father was given a home in Rancho Palos Verdes, right there, Palos Verdes, and that is close proximity to where the Freedom is moored. This is where Lena LaBianca was trained to be a military policeman, right here at Fort MacArthur, named after Douglas MacArthur's father. You know, Douglas MacArthur came from royalty family of military service, United States Army, and his father was a big shot, and after his father died, they named the military facility there, the United States Army base, Fort MacArthur, after Douglas MacArthur's father. It's been a military base since 1888, at least, before the Spanish-American War. It wasn't named Fort MacArthur until 10 years after Douglas MacArthur's father died. So like 1927, something like that, the name Fort MacArthur came into existence. Thanks for listening. Hit the like and subscribe. I am Shadow Band. Take care.